Racism is racism, and it's not somehow contingent on the goodwill of the speaker. It doesn't matter how much of an activist that you've been in the past, and certainly being black doesn't shield you from hurtful comments. This week, Nick Cannon was fired from ViacomCBS for making anti-Semitic comments in an episode of his YouTube channel show, Cannon's Class. Now, where your intent is not to offend, or if you were misled or you lacked information on a topic, where you offend someone, you should immediately apologize and ask for forgiveness. Now, when someone shares with you what you said was hurtful and they help you understand why it was hurtful, that is the right thing to do. Welcome to Deliberate with Dada. Today, let's get into the comments that were made by Nick Cannon, the reaction of social media, and I'll share with you why I hate cancel culture. Now, the comments that Nick Cannon made came during a conversation that he was having with his guests on his podcast, Cannon Class. And before we move on, I think it's important to set the stage. He's having a conversation with Professor Griff, who was kicked out of Public Enemy in 1989 for making anti-Semitic comments himself during multiple interviews. And we can get into exactly what was said, but I don't want to do that yet. What I want to do first, and which I think is the most important thing, is to just level set on, as an offender or as the offender, you don't get to define when someone is allowed to be offended by what you said. When you make comments that are perceived to be anti-Semitic or they're insensitive to white people, you should be remorseful. And I want to be clear, this is not to be confused with being dishonest about history of this country or to somehow disregard global history. There are truths about humanity that we cannot escape. But I am of the opinion that we can distinguish hate speech from a true history lesson.
When you have a person that has the lack of pigment, the lack of melanin, that they know that they will be annihilated. So therefore, however they got the power, they have the lack of compassion. That melanin comes with compassion. Melanin comes with soul. That we call it soul. We soul brothers and sisters. That's the melanin that connects us. So the people that don't have it are a little, and I'm gonna say this carefully, are a little less, and where the term actually comes from, because I'm bringing it all the way back around to Minister Farrakhan, to where they may not have the compassion or the when they were sent to the mountains of Caucasus, when they didn't have the power of the sun, that the sun then started to deteriorate them. So then they're acting out of fear. They're acting out of low self-esteem. They're acting out of a deficiency. So therefore, the only way that they can act is evil. The only way they have to rob, steal, rape, kill, and
fight or flight,
in order to survive.
Exactly.
So then these people who didn't have what we had, and when I say we, I speak of the melanated people.
Right.
They had to be savages. They had to be barbaric. Because they're in these Nordic mountains. They're in these rough, torrential environments. So they're acting as animals.
Right.
So they're the ones that are actually closer to animals. They're the ones that are actually the true savages. And then they built up such this I don't want to say warrior, but they built up such this.
Now, this type of ideology is drastically concerning. To make comments that suggest that one's melanin or the lack of one's melanin somehow connotates compassion or love, or conversely makes someone a savage or barbaric, it's, to state it bluntly, it's hateful. Now, Nick Cannon stands in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement, whose goal is to bring about racial equality. And you cannot stand on one side of the street trying to bring about change and bigotry, but at the same time perpetuating the same narrative. For anyone questioning whether or not these statements were hateful or whether or not they were wrong, just flip the hypothetical for a minute. You have a white host saying because of his white skin, he is compassionate and loving, and a darker skin is somehow barbaric and savage. And I think when we flip the hypothetical in that very simple way, I think it should cut through to you why what Nick Cannon said was wrong, why apologizing would be appropriate. But I'm still curious of your thoughts. Please like, comment below. Let me know how you're thinking about this. Do you have a different point of view? Do you agree with me? So here's something that drives me nuts about social media. Now, sometimes it's a good thing, but other times it drives me crazy. The platforms are set up in a way that makes it way too easy for people whose views you believe you're aligned with to support. But you have to be more thoughtful. You have to be more careful. When you hit like or share or retweet or comment even, you have to ask yourself, did you really have an opportunity to think about what was said? And do you truly support it after giving it some thought? You know, there's a big difference between I support you and your legacy, but at the moment I can't get behind what you said. Or I support your freedom to say how you feel or state what you believe you learn, but you are wrong. We are not a monolithic species. We have nuance. You know, and this very thing happens to Dwayne Wade of all people, who tweeted out, "Continue to lead," only to later come back and follow that up with a retweet denouncing anti-Semitism. And he was going to fight the system. And D. Wade, clearly not giving much thought to his decision to get behind this tweet, now aligned himself with some thoughts that after giving it some thought, he doesn't agree with. And this is one pitfall of social media, that people have a tendency to quickly hit like. They read a quick caption that's designed to get your attention. It's designed to get you to read an article or click on an article and open an article. And then you've now aligned yourself with something after giving it thought that you wouldn't otherwise be aligned with. Drives me absolutely nuts. Now, if this is something that you also drives you up a wall, or you feel differently about, or you feel strongly about, feel free to leave a comment below and let me know your point of view on this topic of people quickly gravitating to different concepts immediately without giving their own personal reflection on the particular topic. Another thing that drives me nuts about social media is how easily we try to tangle trending topics into one another. There was a post floating out there that compared the speed at which Nick Cannon lost his job to the lack of speed in which the murderers in Breonna Taylor's case lost their jobs. And to be clear, the murder of Breonna Taylor was horrific, and I am hopeful that her killers are brought to justice. But Nick Cannon losing his job and being compared to Breonna Taylor killers not losing their job is a false equivalency. It's not apples to apples. To compare Nick Cannon to Breonna Taylor's murderers, you would have to compare Nick Cannon to other media members who made racist remarks and did not lose their jobs. People, stop. Take a moment to think about what you're about to share and ask yourself, does this make sense? Another learning that I think we have in this instance with Nick Cannon is making qualified statements. Now, in Nick Cannon's interview, he says, I shouldn't say this. Look, at the end of the day, if you ever find yourself saying, I shouldn't say this, or not to be racist, or not to be offensive, if you qualify your statement in any way, you probably shouldn't make the statement. So I said it once and I'll say it again. I am not a cancel culture fan. I think there's a clear line on where someone should be canceled. And it's quite clear to me. Where you act in violence or a threat of violence, or where criminal charges have been brought, or criminal charges are being pursued, you should be canceled. But Nick Cannon's case is a perfect example of why I can't stand cancel culture. Nick Cannon has a long history of creating opportunities for Black creatives. He's a huge supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement. He made a mistake. He was indoctrinating himself in some stereotypical propaganda for which he apologized for. Not only did he apologize, but he met with a rabbi in an attempt to educate himself. He learned history. He learned why what he shared was anti-Semitic. He learned why it was hurtful. And to force him to lose his job and an entire platform that he had is to suggest that people don't evolve, that they cannot learn, that once provided with new information, that they cannot think differently. And I think to do so is wrong. People should be allowed an opportunity to repent. People should be allowed an opportunity to educate themselves. People should be allowed an opportunity to evolve as human beings. And they should be allowed to be different, be better, and change their lives and the lives of others. And cancel culture closes the door to those opportunities.